In this video, I'm going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets, and just like the title says, really how good I think they are as a team going into this next NBA season. And for those of you guys that follow me on Instagram and consistently follow my channel and have for a long time, you know that last year I was one of the biggest Brooklyn Nets doubters out there. I actually made an entire video at the start of the season after they made the Harden trade on why I think they wouldn't make the NBA Finals, and the entire year I was saying they were a second round exit for reasons that I had, specifically their defense and how I didn't think it was good enough. And I mean, technically I was right. They were a second round exit to the Milwaukee Bucks, but we all know that this team would have won that series and probably would have made the finals if it wasn't for injuries and if they stayed healthy. And I learned a lot of stuff about this Brooklyn Nets team this year, watching a lot of their games and watching them in the postseason, and my opinion on them is completely changed. And in this video I wanted to go through them, analyze what they're looking like going into next season, and how they could historically be one of the best offensive teams this season that we have ever seen in NBA history, and specifically examine stuff like their defense, which I'm going to talk about at the end of today's video, and overall what they're looking like as a team going into this season and what their season outcome might look like when it's all said and done. So let's get into the video now. The first thing I want to talk about here is where all of us have to start talking with the Brooklyn Nets, and that's their big three, and how offensively this trio could legitimately be one of, if not the very best offensive trio this season that we've ever seen. When the Nets went out and made that James Harden trade, I had doubts for this team, just like a lot of us did, because they're now having three ball-dominant players playing together. I mean, when they had KD and Kyrie together alone, I already had doubts because both of these guys are the type of guys that seemed like they needed the ball in their hands to succeed, and adding Harden I thought was honestly just going to make it worse that way. But you can tell that all three of these guys, ever since Harden got to the Nets, have really bought into winning. All of them are willing to give up the ball if they need to, and they have really good chemistry together now and are still all playing like top 10 offensive players in the league for sure. All of these guys scoring wise are still absolutely elite. Amazing volume scoring for these guys. They can create their own shot off of the dribble and play iso ball if they need to. They can catch and shoot and score off of each other's passes and score really efficiently too, and have above average efficiency. When we look at some stats, realizing still just how good of scorers these guys are, we look at Kevin Durant last season putting up 27 points per game on 54% from the field, 45% from three, and 88% from the line, resulting in almost a 67% true shooting, which is absolutely insane. And he took this to a whole new level in the playoffs as well. We look at James Harden, who last year took a step back scoring and was mainly the main facilitator and playmaker on this team, but still putting up about 25 points per game on 47% from the field, 36% from three, and an overall 62% true shooting, which is still well above average. And Kyrie Irving had a very underrated season last year in my opinion, playing still like a top 12 player in the NBA and definitely a top 10 offensive player, scoring wise putting up 27 points per game as well on 50-40-90 shooting, which is absolutely insane for a point guard with his play style, actually becoming the fifth player ever to put up more than 25 points per game with 50-40-90 shooting, and it's going pretty unnoticed. And he also had a 62% true shooting last year, which is also well above average. So scoring wise, all of these guys are absolutely insane, and all of these guys are underrated playmakers as well. Obviously all of them do a great job of drawing attention towards them, getting double teams toward them, having good gravity, and creating space. And actually all three of these guys were top 10 in the league last year in box creation, which for those of you that watch the channel, I love to use this stat. It's a stat that pretty much measures how many open shots for your teammates you create per game, and like I said, all of them were top 10. KD and Kyrie ranking 9th and 10th, and Harden ranking number 3. When we look specifically at what these guys did, Kevin Durant last year averaging about 5.5 assists per game with about a 12.3 box creation. James Harden ranking 2nd in the league in assists per game with almost 11 per game, and also 3rd in the league in box creation with about a 17.3 per game. And also Kyrie having put up 6 assists per game last season and having a 12 box creation per game as well. So overall, these guys as a trio are absolutely insane. Last year, while playing together, they were still able to put up the same numbers that they were the previous years of their career, if not better, scoring wise. And especially Harden, I was very impressed with him, how he was able to take a step back with his scoring ability and kind of play pass first in this Nets offense. And all of these guys have good chemistry together. They're willing to give up the ball if they need to, and everything I talked about, all the stats and especially the eye test, all conk out. And this big three right here is easily the best offensive big three in in the league right now is going to be absolutely even better than they were last season in this next upcoming season. Now, I also wanted to talk about some acquisitions that I think are a little bit underrated from the Nets here. Last year, they got a guy like Blake Griffin, and they got also LaMarcus Aldridge, who is actually coming back now. He's now cleared to play, and he actually signed with the Nets as well, so he'll be playing for them in this offseason too. They got Paul Millsap. Now, obviously, all of these guys are not even close to the players that they used to be in the prime of their careers, but all of these guys can provide a lot for this Nets team offensively as well. All of them are big bodies that can play in the post, be effective post options for these guys, and they're going to be taking less shots per game that they have throughout their entire career, but I think they're going to be willing to accept their roles, considering they're on a championship caliber team. Obviously, they're going to get a lot of easy buckets down low, playoff ball, play in the post a lot, and two of these guys too, in Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, are actually above average 3-point shooters now too, and Paul Millsap can shoot that 3 as well. So I think these guys, if they accept the roles offensively, can provide some good things for this team as well, despite not being in their primes anymore. Next thing I wanted to talk about this team offensively is their 3-point shooting and their spacing, and how the rest of their supporting cast are pretty much all very good 3-point shooters. We look at a guy like Joe Harris, who obviously had a really bad playoff run last year, but is still arguably the very best in the league at catching, shooting, and shooting that 3 ball, having amazing percentages from 3 last year, actually shooting 47.5% from 3 in the regular season. A guy like Jeff Green, who can be an elite shooter at times. They added Patty Mills in the offseason, who can still play off ball and be a very good 3-point shooter. And like I mentioned too, a guy like Blake Griffin is starting to shoot more 3s now and do it consistently. Even LaMarcus Aldridge has developed a very much better consistent 3-point shot, and not to mention that all of their big 3 too can still shoot that 3 very effectively, and they proved last year that they can play off ball and sometimes be catch and shooters as well. So this team has amazing spacing, and I'm going to put up on the screen right now all of those 3-point shooters that I discussed and what their percentages were from 3 last season, and how well they can shoot that 3, and on what volume they can do it as well. So putting those 3-point attempts per game, I'll put that up on the screen as well. So all of these guys, as you can see, pretty much all shooting above average percentages, most of them on above average volume, and this is going to be very helpful for this Brooklyn Nets team. The spacing for their big 3 and anyone that's handling the ball, and just the fact that they can knock down this many 3s is going to be amazing too. So overall for this offense, they have the best offensive trio in the league by far. Some guys that aren't in their prime anymore but used to be stars and can still be efficient scorers and play down low, and some very good 3-point shooters as well. And now that most of these guys have had a full year playing together, they're going to have much better chemistry too. And like I said, especially talking with that big 3, I expect even better things this year from this Brooklyn Nets team offensively than we got last season, and this team is just going to be so scary. They now have a full year together as well. If they stay fully healthy, it's just going to be a nightmare for the entire league. I mean, Kyrie, KD, and Harden only played a total of 8 regular season games together the entirety of last season. So if this team can stay healthy and get even better chemistry together, they're going to be absolutely scary with their incredible big 3, some interior scoring, some very good 3-point shooting, and some very good playmakers on this team as well. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about today is this Nets defense, and this is going to be the most important part of their team. Like I said, my main doubt for them last year was their defense, and how last season in the regular season they had the 22nd ranked defense in terms of defensive rating in the NBA, and the last 20 champions that have won the NBA championship have had top 11 defenses in the NBA. So this was obviously a big concern for this team, and I don't think a lot of casual fans around the NBA were realizing that this team's defense really wasn't good enough to win that championship last season. But actually in the NBA playoffs, their defense improved a lot. They definitely did a lot of things better defensively, and everyone was buying in. And in the NBA playoffs, they actually had the 4th best defensive rating in the playoffs among all of the teams that made the playoffs. So this was very impressive as well, and I think they're going to continue those improvements. And as long as they have an above average defense around that 15th-ish range or higher than that, I think this team will easily make the NBA Finals next season. And you can tell too that this team's offense is just so good that they're not necessarily one of those teams that absolutely needs that top 10 defense to win the NBA championship. They just have to hold their own on defense and allow that offense to score historic numbers every night if their big 3 is healthy. Now, some things that stand out for me about this team's defense is how, first of all, their big 3, I mean, KD, Harden, and Kyrie, none none of these guys really stand out as good defenders, but if they need to play good defense, they can really buy in and play some pretty good defense. I mean, we look at Kevin Durant, he can be a pretty good rim protector and off-ball defender when he's giving it all he's got. James Harden is a very underrated defender at times when he's giving it his all. I mean, obviously effort is a problem for Harden at times, especially in the regular season defensively and on the perimeter, but he can use his size to his advantage and be a pretty good interior defender, especially in the NBA playoffs. And Kyrie too, I mean, he's never going to be an over-average defender, but when he's giving it his all, can be kind of a decent perimeter defender as well. So all of these guys, when they're buying in, can be good defensively. A guy like Blake Griffin proved last year that he can actually be a good on-ball defender as well. And the man that stands out to me the most here is a young player like Nicholas Claxton. Mark my words, guys, this is the Brooklyn Nets' best defender right here. I mean, we saw in the regular season last year that he's so versatile, and sometimes actually in the fourth quarter in the regular season, the Brooklyn Nets used a strategy of switching the pick and roll and having Claxton guard the point guard on this team after they ran a pick and roll, and he's versatile enough to do that, can pretty much defend 1 through 5, and is going to improve on that this year, and I expect him to get a lot more minutes this season. Steve Nash needs to play Claxton a lot more because he's the team's best defensive anchor, the best pick and roll defender, and the best rim protector on this team, and has a lot of potential on both ends of the floor. So I actually think he really needs to play a lot this year, and that he's their best defender, and he could help them a lot if he gets those minutes. So overall, we're looking at a pretty decent defense from this Nets team that I really wasn't realizing last year, and it will get a lot better as well, and I think they will have a slightly above average defense, and like we saw last year, they can really turn it up defensively in the playoffs too. As a unit, they have some pretty good strategies, especially in the playoffs. We saw with the Bucks how they were able to shrink the floor a lot, play smart defense, and I know Steve Nash isn't a defensive coach, but he can still be smart that way, adjust defensively, and this team could be a pretty good overall defensive team next season, especially in the NBA playoffs. So to answer the question in the title, how good will the Brooklyn Nets be this season? In my opinion, in the regular season, this team won't be necessarily giving it everything they've got every night, but I still think they are talented enough to be a 60-win team in the regular season, around that 60-win mark, and in the playoffs, I think if this team can stay relatively healthy and have their big three healthy most of the time, and at least 2 of their big 3 healthy throughout the entirety of the playoffs, I think this team will easily make the NBA Finals this season with kind of their new and improved team, some better chemistry, and potentially some better defense. And I think this team has pretty much, if they do get to the NBA Finals, if they're facing the Lakers, I think this is pretty much a toss-up here. I made a video on kind of previewing a Lakers-Nets final. I know it's even before the season, but how this could be the greatest finals that we've ever seen. Be sure to check out that video as well. I think this is a great video I made as well. But I think if they're facing the Lakers, I'm not going to go in depth here. Make sure you guys check out that video for more in-depth analysis on this. But it's pretty much a coin toss here. But to conclude, I think the Nets will pretty much easily make the finals if they can stay fully healthy and may or may not win that championship this season. So there you have it. That is the end of today's video. Those are my thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets going into this season. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. And be sure to comment down below your thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets going into this 2022 season. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next video.